It's that time again. The annual conference of the American Society of Ag Consultants, otherwise known as ASAC, is going to be held in Fort Myers, Florida, this November 4th and 5th. Kurt Covington is one of 9 professionals who will address the conference. The other speakers who will cover a wide range of topics represent Florida Farm Bureau, Florida Citrus Commission, University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture, National Ag Law Center, Risk Mitigators and Advisors, Tyler Associates, as well as the lead economist for dairy at CoBank, and myself, Chrissy Wozniak from North American Ag. The day and a half of presentations will be followed by ag tours on Tuesday afternoon at Echo Farms, one of my favorite places here in Fort Myers. Attendees will experience farming at its most creative, with unique demonstrations, plants, and techniques being used to help farmers and urban gardeners in developing countries. A second tour at Echo will showcase simple technologies that can improve food, water, and shelter for millions of people. A third tour of a hydroponic grower is also being planned. For more information and to register, visit www.agconsultants.org. That's www.agconsultants.org. See you there. And welcome to the American Ag Spotlight. I'm Chrissy Wozniak. Today, I welcome onto the show 2 gentlemen who have devoted their careers to the agriculture industry, and they're also involved in a professional organization of consultants covering the breadth and depth of the agricultural disciplines. Founded and organized in 1963, the American Society of Agricultural Consultants' mission is to promote professional development of consultants in education, networking, and ethical standards. Today, we're going to discuss why this organization exists, and we're also going to talk about their upcoming convention. From Tyler, Texas, I would like to welcome Pete Weisenberger, owner of Weisenberger Agricultural Services and president of the American Society of Agricultural Consultants. And from Clarksville, Tennessee, Russell Morgan, owner of Morgan Agriculture Consulting Services and Morgan Tax Services. Welcome, Pete and Russell, and thank you so much for being here today. You guys have a long intro. You're involved in so much.
Well, thank you, Chrissy. Thank you.
Thank you. And so let's start out with each of your backgrounds. How did you get where you are today?
Okay. Well, one quick clarification. Even though on social media or whatever it shows Clarksville, actually my headquarters is Portland, Tennessee, which is just due north of Nashville. And then I also have a satellite office here in Paducah, Kentucky, which is where I am today, where most of my tax business is. A little background on myself. I was born in Asheville and spent the first 2 years of my life in just close to Mars Hill, North Carolina, in the mountains of western North Carolina. My father and mom were dairy farmers there. My dad has bought Guadalcanal, Coral Sea. He has a rich experience and very experience in the Army and what have you. But he was farming in around Mars Hill, North Carolina, a dairy farmer. And he came to, soon after I was born, probably a year after I was born, he came to a decision. He either was going to be a full-time insurance salesman, which he was doing part-time as well as the dairy farming, or become a full-time dairy farmer. He and mom opted for the dairy farming. And they looked around the mountains of North Carolina and realized that growing the dairy farm to the commercial size needed to be successful wasn't going to be possible there. Although Dad liked to kid around with folks and tell that he bred a special type of Holstein dairy cow that had 2 legs longer than the other so they could graze on the hillside, without falling over. But anyway, he found located a dairy farm in North Middle Tennessee, and it's really interesting how that happened because that back before social media and what have you, 8 hours away was a little difficult or unusual to find a location or find a dairy farm or a farm to purchase. But anyway, he came to North Middle Tennessee, was fortunate enough to find a lender, not knowing him from anyone, from Adam, if you will, to finance the dairy farm, and we started dairy farming there North Middle Tennessee, grew to a couple of dairy farms, a pretty reasonable size farm business. And so that I grew up there in North Middle Tennessee on a dairy, tobacco, beef, grain. Of course, that was back in the 60s. Now, commercial agriculture was much different than now. It was much more diverse, and we did everything. I even remember when I was a youngster, we had the old time hog killing, which that's a totally different era. Anyway, so I tell folks I was mountain bred, farm raised, and from growing up on the dairy farm, went to starting my educational process at Western Kentucky University, which was just about 25 miles north, and they allowed us to Tennesseans to enroll without paying out-of-state tuition. Thought I was just going to get a 2-year Associate of Arts degree, come back and work in a parts department at a tractor dealership, and then also dairy farm. But then I took an economics class, and I was hooked. So I decided, nope, I want to go for a 4-year degree. And I realized that in agriculture economics, I probably needed to go to a land grant university. So I ended up at University of Tennessee, finished my degree, and with the notion that I would come back to the dairy farm. And so I did that. But that was May 1982. 1982 was not exactly the premier time to be engaging in the dairy farm career. So it took about 9 months to a year. I looked around and realized there wasn't enough resources on that dairy farm for my parents. I had a young family. I had a 2-year-old myself, and also my 2 brothers who also wanted to farm, but they didn't have the advantage of having an education, college education. So I went back to grad school, earned my degree, master's degree in agricultural economics, took a job as area specialist in farm management at the University of Kentucky in far western Kentucky. And once again, my timing was not necessarily the best. That was September 1, first day on the job, September 1, 1985, right in the throes of the agricultural crisis. And so I was tasked with working with a group of farmers and helping them navigate through those trying times. And that was placed on a graduate student, fresh out of school, still wet behind the ears, learned a lot, learned quickly, but that indoctrination by fire really served me well over the years. So I worked there with the university until 2003. I started my own business, and I've been doing that primarily some tax work as well as consulting work since then. And so here I am today with regard to my consulting profession. With regard to ASAC, the American Society of Ag Consultants, which we use the acronym ASAC, just out of the blue, a member called me and invited me to come to a annual conference, we called them annual meetings back then. So I did, and I joined in 1994 and been a member ever since. And operated or assisted or participated in various capacities in ASAC over time. Sometimes committee members. I've been a president one time, and a couple of different stints as CFO. And I'm operating or participating as CFO for the organization. So that's a lot of background, but that's where it tells something about me.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Pete?
Well, Russell and I have some similarities. I grew up on a little dairy farm in Mississippi. As a young man, my father slumped over dead of a heart attack one morning in May of 1968. And his brother, Uncle Herman, told their cousin, Robert, if you want these cows, and he used some other language on it, but if you want these cows, you come get them, because I'm not milking them. And the story goes, cousin Robert got all the cows, and I went with them. So I grew up on the dairy with some cousins. This was in the 1970s. So I went off to Mississippi State to get a veterinary degree. That was my goal in life, and that didn't work out. Biochemistry and a few other courses determined that I wasn't going to be a veterinarian. So I ended up working for a Production Credit Association. sometimes in between years after college, but I ended up working for Production Credit in Huntsville, Alabama in 1984. And again, the 1980s, as Russell alluded to, that was some tough times, and I got trial by fire. We learned, that's when I got a real education. I ended up at the land bank in Jackson, Mississippi, went back there to work that area. In 1986, it was going back home. But that time, some of our older hands might remember the 1980s. The Federal Land Bank of Jackson was the only farm credit bank ever put in receivership, and hopefully will never be another one like that. But that was my trial by fire. We worked out a lot of troubled debt. That was I tell everybody I got my PhD in finance by dealing with a lot of that, and that was some tough times. But I progressed through farm credit over the years. Ended up in South Carolina and Florida with the system. Times got good again for the most part. So I got a lot of experiences up and down the East Coast, down into Florida, in the citrus industry. A lot of good industry. Got to Puerto Rico a few times, agriculture there. So I worked through the progression of farm credit jobs all across the South and the Southeast. Got back out of the system, went back home and tended to some family business through the early 2000s. Did some real estate work, just a variety of things. Ended up with an S&L, some of the S&L crisis as well. So that was another educational experience. I learned what the word fraud means. I thought I knew some stuff. I was a young man. I knew everything at the time. A lot of people do, I think, but they taught me some lessons there that have stuck with me ever since. But I stayed involved with farm credit doing some contract work, particularly out here in Texas. So about 10, 11 years ago, I took a position out here with one of the farm credit associations, moved to Texas, and did that for 6.5 years. I was in ASAC back in the mid-90s through 2006 and was involved with it and gotten to know Russell a little bit and some of the other old timers who have gone to their reward. But some great experiences there, but I'd wandered off down some other career paths in the mid-2000s while I was in Mississippi. Got out of the society for a while, but came back in 4 years ago after I left farm credit on this last tour of duty and got back involved with the society as well as a couple of other organizations in farm finance management, and just wanted to get back on the lender side. I'm not the lender side, but the producer side of the desk and work with producers. So this is a great fit. And as I say, I planted my flag in Texas. I'm not from Texas, but I got here as quick as I could. And it's a great opportunities and great times to be in agriculture today. The technologies we have, I wish we'd had 40 years ago, but it is what it is. But it's great opportunities out here to be in agriculture and to work across the country.
Yeah, for sure. Great points, Pete. And can you give me an overview of the American Society of Agriculture Consultants, ASAC, and its mission?
Chrissy, I'll address that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to read our mission statement. I apologize. I'm going to read it just to make sure that I don't miss anything. But our mission statement really is four-pronged. It has four bullet points. The first one is to foster the discipline of agricultural consulting in all its varied fields. And what's unique about ASAC is that it is not narrowly focused on the type of consulting members that we cater to. There are some organizations out there, they have a consulting arm or a membership or even a designation, but but their name is something different, and that's just a portion of what they do. But ASAC, I tell folks, it's in our name. We're a diverse organization. We've had and have members that have been involved in animal nutrition, poultry production, wine production, agronomy, and folks like myself and the Farm Business Advisory, and just across all the different areas. We even have two presidents of very well-known and significant agricultural accounting software company. So we're diverse. So we cover all the varied fields. Second bullet point, to promote the profession, holding members accountable to exemplary standards involving training, experience, knowledge, performance, and the ability to provide independent and objective consulting services. This organization was founded on and was rooted in ethics because, and I'll come back to the history shortly, but the prominent founders realized that there was, and this was in 1963, as you mentioned earlier in your intro, that there was in the agriculture consulting field, there seemed to be a lack of integrity and ethics. So that was really where this organization began from. Part of the reason it was founded, a good, important part of the reason it was founded. Bullet point 3, to provide opportunities for members to convene for the exchange of ideas and the study of topics germane to the profession of agriculture consulting in its varied fields. Now, there's tremendous value to what I call professional fellowship. Sometimes it's financial value. If you collaborate, work together, trade off, refer. So there can be financial value, but as an ag econ guy, I can say that there's also some non-financial, but still economic value. I know from a personal experience from the years that I've been in this organization, I've sat around, not necessarily just in the formalized presentation, education scenarios or courses, but actually sitting around maybe at the reception, perhaps just sitting around after our annual conference. Some of the classes were over, and just having discussions with other consultants and getting their perspective. And as I mentioned, since they're diverse, they can have significantly different perspectives because of the fields, the lanes that they work in is different than what I work in. However, I pick up their perceptions, and sometimes it can help me in my work with clients in my particular space, if you will. So there's tremendous value to that. Again, I use the term professional fellowship. Bullet point 4, to build and maintain a code of professional business ethics in the broad field of agriculture consulting. And as I mentioned before, a large reason for the foundation of this organization was what was perceived, probably was, lack of ethics and integrity in the agricultural business or agricultural consulting field. And from a history standpoint, just real quickly, and we have a rich and diverse history. Some of the founders of this organization are, if you go back in agricultural history, they are titans of the agricultural industry. Dr. E.M. Insminger, I remember using his textbooks in some of my undergraduate classes. I almost had a double major in animal science, so I took a significant number of animal science courses. Dr. Insminger was the author of many books. He was one of the founders. Jim Knopfsinger was a very important dairy and animal nutritionist located in California. He was well known. He's been on some, I saw where he was actually interviewed on some national TV. Or back then you had 3 channels, right? But national TV networks and what have you. And so we have other significant players in the ag industry. Roy Ferguson, who had the Ferguson Group. He has been a member. He was a long time member. And so other folks like that. But the history is rich. It's diverse. And we went through some different undulations over time. There was a time in the 70s. In fact, our first executive vice president, Frank Frazier, he was very instrumental in helping members of the organization obtain some government grants or government funding, if you will, for some international development. And we've had international members that have worked in places from Romania, Moldova, and hot topic of the day, Ukraine. And we have current members that are working in different areas. And one in particular is heavily involved in Africa, in development there.
Wow.
So that's a little bit of the history. There's a lot more to it. In fact, the full history can be downloaded off our website. When we had our 50th anniversary back in 2013, we prepared a booklet detailing the early years, the intermediate years, and all the way up to 2013.
Amazing. That's a pretty rich history. And the membership, as you kind of touched on, is made up of a diverse range of disciplines in the ag industry. Could you elaborate on the types of expertise and services that the members offer?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, we have from animal nutrition to farm business advisory services like myself to marketing.
Wow.
We have folks who've had members and we currently have members that are involved in the risk management area with risk management on crop pricing. We also have folks that are working in the risk management in other types of risk management. We've had crop insurance folks, members, excuse me, and we've had members that have worked in nutrient management as well over time. And we've had members and have members that work in ag tech. And as I mentioned earlier, we have presidents of and member and actually some employees of two ag accounting software companies as members. So we've also an interesting caveat is for a few years we had a member from Portugal who raised raised grapes and produced wine. And every 2 years, Pedro would attend our annual conference. And we always looked forward to when Pedro would come because he'd bring some of his wares with him. So that was a little enjoyable addition, if you will. But certainly we've had, and we have and had members across almost the entire spectrum of agriculture, production agriculture.
Yeah, that's incredible. And how does the organization support its members? So in terms of continuing education related to both agriculture and practice management?
Well, we have, from an education standpoint, we have a couple of actually multiple ways that we support and encourage education and professional development. One is we collaborate with other organizations if they have educational offerings that are pertinent to and appropriate for ASAC members. One in particular I'll bring up is Dick Whitman Consulting. Dick is also an ASAC member, but he produces, I think it's about every year annually, a Train the Trainer workshop. And in fact, a couple of times, and including this year, we have piggybacked or dovetailed together his course, his workshop, immediately prior to our ASAC annual conference. So this year in Fresno, California, Saturday and Sunday, he will convene and conduct his workshop. And so we will have some ASAC members there and also probably some, typically when we've done this before, some of the members or some of his attendees that maybe aren't ASAC members will attend our annual conference. So it's a good mutual benefit, if you will. Yeah. And so we're glad to collaborate with Dick on that. Also, we have courses that ASAC develops or it offers through our organization. Part of them, or they are subject to or eligible for the obtaining the Certified Ag Consultant CAC designation as well. One in particular we've had in person was consulting practice management, but that was prior to the lockdown. Now, since then, we are moving it forward and modifying it toward a virtual presentation. And so hopefully that will be completed, and we'll try to have that available prior to our annual conference, and that will be a virtual presentation, a virtual option, if you will, for that course. We're also developing a principles of consulting course that will be offered sometime next year. And we're also developing, it's pretty close to being finished, a course oriented toward, actually a two-part course oriented toward communications, including social media and all the various things that fall under that umbrella of communications for agriculture consultants. That should be available and offered. I think the schedule is early next year. And so that's the coursework. On top of that, we have a couple of different things that we add value to our members. One is we have a bi-monthly newsletter, and we call it Notes from the Field. And how that works is members will run across articles, webinars, podcasts, or maybe even conventions or this type of thing that they think would be interesting to and useful for, informative for fellow members. And they send it to the Continuing Education Committee, which I happen to chair currently. And so we curate those, and we have about 15 different topical areas. We array those out, try to send out, we keep it to about 10 or 11 each month so we don't overwhelm folks, or each newsletter, I'm sorry. And so we send that out twice per month. And so that information goes out in broadcast email to all the ASAC members. And we try to, like I said, we try to be diverse in that because we have a diversity of membership. And so that's the Notes from the Field. We also have a monthly webinar series. And we don't host and create the webinar each month, probably about every other month, that we will actually find someone from the industry, some entity or organization come in and provide a presentation to our members. And every other month, what we try to do there is find, piggyback on a webinar that's already being developed. We've used National Ag Law Center several times. They do a tremendous job. Farm Foundation, other webinars, and we'll promote those to our members. Hey, here's a webinar. Here's something that may be of interest to you. And so we put that out there for them to see. The last thing that we do, this is more toward the professional development side, is we have a shop talk series, and we do this monthly. Well, we've missed a month, but we try to do this monthly. And what that is truly a roundtable discussion for ag consultants on topics that are pertinent to and useful for agricultural consultants. What we typically do there, a lot of times it's a current ASAC member. We've had some non-ASAC members come in and facilitate. And the facilitator basically has a very brief introduction of the subject of the topic, maybe some discussion points. And then from there, it is truly a roundtable discussion, what I term circular learning.
Wow. Oh, I love that idea. That's amazing. And you really emphasize the importance of supporting one another. So do you have any examples of how members collaborate and, help each other in their practices?
Well, I think the bottom line is we all communicate and network together, as Russell said, and we all both said earlier. We have our areas of expertise and experience that we work in. I work in the financial and the business side of things. Others work on the production side, HR. Just a mix of things. But where we communicate and network together, we feed off each other's competencies and experiences. If I have a client I'm working with and I'm not qualified in that particular aspect, I would hand it off to someone else or bring someone else in and help that other person, and may need to hand it off to them completely. And we got to determine the fit. First, we got to sit down and build a relationship with a client, whatever clients we might have, before we even delve into any of the business. That's where I've failed at times, or if it come up short, I go in with guns blazing, thinking I'm going to solve a problem that they might have mentioned early on. This is our overriding objective, and I go in with guns blazing and figure out quickly I outran my coverage. So we have to back up. We need to pull in our other parties, and all consulting assignments start on trust and integrity and honesty about what we can do, what we can't do, what we're qualified to do, what does the client need and want, who all is involved in the situation. So we pull things together and pull each other together and just try to shore up where our weaknesses are and add our strengths to the equation. So, and all that said too, we collaborate with each other, help each other. This certified ag consultant designation is our professional designation, and we should help and mentor each other, whether they're young or old or long-term members or new members. We have people coming in who are maybe retired from an earlier job or coming in from another job, not necessarily retired, but transitioning from one part of the industry to another. So we try to help and mentor each other and build us up. That's what it's all about, building up each other. None of us are as good as all of us is one of the things I use. So
yeah, that's it. And
I think that's a long answer to could be a much shorter. We help each other. We assist. But bottom line is the client, what does the client need?
Right. It reminds me of one of the things that I love so much about this industry. In my career, I've spent a lot of time at farm shows, and what a lot of producers don't realize is that after the show, we all eat together. And like hundreds of times I've seen this play out where you're just sitting around with a bunch of sales reps and they start talking about, a farm that they're concerned about. And the table just comes together and tries to figure out the solution. And sometimes, like many times, nobody at the table benefits, but they know, oh, well, this person could help or that person could help. It's a big network that I think if producers knew to utilize more, or if somehow we could communicate that network is really valuable. And I think that's what you guys really is at the root of what you guys are all about, right?
Peer groups amongst consultants as well as peer groups amongst producers. And I'll add a comment in there, confidentiality.
Yeah.
Confidentiality is very important. We can sit around and talk about a lot of issues, some common issues, some specific issues with somebody we may know, but at the end of the day, we know where to draw the line into confidentiality. People, all of America is a small town, and we know what's happening. Everybody knows everybody's business in a small town. But confidentiality, and that's part of the ethics that we talked about. You'd mentioned Russell talked about ethics earlier. I'll delve off into that if that's appropriate at this point.
Yeah, for
why
sure.
is ethics so important to this organization? Well, I'll answer that with a question: is why is ethics important in anything, personal or professional lives in society? We see it in the culture, in society in general, the politics we deal with in this country and in the world. Ethics is the base and the foundation we all live on, and we build our businesses on ethics. Without ethics, everything else is out the window. We're just a bunch of gunslingers in the Wild West. Ethics is the foundation, and that's what we have to. We abide by that 10-point code of ethics. It's on the website. People can find it. Anybody looking on the website can find it and read it. That's where we start.
Yeah, that's awesome. And do you have a way if a member violates those ethics, are there disciplinary actions?
We have an ethics and grievance committee. Wow. Fortunately, we not have an ethics and grievance committee case in a long time, long as I can remember. That doesn't mean it might not be out there, but someone has to bring forth a grievance. But we do have a mechanism and a procedure to handle that. If somebody does bring something forward, it will be handled impartially, and fairly. Again, with the proper and appropriate amounts of confidentiality, but it will be dealt with, and for all and fairness to all parties.
Right.
It's no different than the rule of law, the way it's supposed to be managed. But again, fortunately we've had no complaints brought forward in quite a long time.
Well, that's really good.
As we grow the organization and we continue to get out there, it's just inevitable that something would happen. And that's human nature. So, but we're prepared for it. We are prepared for that.
Very good. So you mentioned before about certification. How would someone start that process? You said it was in person before, but now it's moving to virtual. Will there be an in-person option too?
Well, the course that I mentioned, the practice management, it was in person and it is moving to virtual. The requirements for the certified agricultural consultant designation, which we abbreviated, acronym CAC, actually is 4 different portions of 4 different points of obtaining and retaining the CAC. One is membership. The first point is membership. And what the requirement, and this has been developed over years ago, and we maintain this requirement, is a 2-year membership requirement. And there's a reason for that, and that's just so that someone doesn't just come in just to try to get their designation and move on. The idea is that we want them to show that they are truly, dedicated to this organization and the agricultural consulting field, if you will. So that's one requirement. The second, and we actually alluded to this, and Pete has touched on it significantly with the Code of Ethics, is the operational requirements. The operational requirement, without going into all the detail of it, basically means that the applicant that wishes to obtain their CAC must show that they abide by the ASAC Code of Ethics. And so that's kind of a summary of what that is. The third is education, as we talked about earlier. And the educational requirements are listed on our website. They're enumerated on what courses, what CEUs are currently applicable and appropriate. And we also do leave out the possibility that if someone maybe is coming in from a different field, not a different field, but already have some educational earnings, if you will, CEUs that they've earned, they can bring those to us, and we can review those, and they may be applicable to that educational requirement. But we have a list that's appropriate, that's already been approved, and then we also have courses that the CAC, once they obtain that CAC, they have to maintain a certain level of educational work, CEUs, over a time period. And the way that works is, once they become a CAC, then they're on a 5-year educational cycle, if you will. And during that 5-year cycle, there's a requirement to have 60 CEUs, and the 60 CEUs are much more generous, if you will, than the approved courses to obtain the CAC, because everyone, if they're working in tax, then they'll have some tax related courses that may not be required for obtaining the CEU, but certainly be eligible for, they're obtaining or they're maintaining their educational requirements in their particular field, but it also applies and it will be applicable, for maintaining the CAC. One thing I did fail to mention is in obtaining the CAC, there is an additional educational requirement for 2 hours of ethics, and actually attendance of 2 different annual conferences, and those actually dovetail together because each annual conference will have 1 to 1.5 hours of ethics presentation in each annual conference. So if a member who desires to become a CAC attends to annual conference, then they basically fulfill 2 of their requirements: the attendance, which is 15 total hours CEUs, each one non-ethics CEUs, and then the 2 hours CEUs. Then in the 5-year cycle, they will require them to have 2 hours of ethics each of those, and during that 5-year cycle. So again, attending 2 years of annual conference fulfills that obligation, as well as we'll get to 30 of the 60 hours of non-ethics CEUs.
Oh, that's fantastic. And ASAC has a history of members with international agriculture consulting. Can you discuss the significance of this international perspective in today's industry?
Well, as everyone knows, agriculture in the current world is global. Yeah. And so there's a global impact. What happened, for example, Ukraine, certainly, what we're seeing currently impacts local prices, local agriculture. So having an international component and having folks or members that have international experience has been beneficial to our organization, to our fellow members, on bringing that perspective to their international experience home to the U.S. And a good example is we have two members that have recently retired, but they worked in Moldova, Ukraine, Romania. And one of the members that had retired that had worked in Ukraine had a friend of his that was very heavily involved, or is heavily involved in Ukraine agriculture in the surrounding areas. He came to visit the U.S. And so we invited him, and he graciously accepted to present a webinar to us about some of the current events and things that we don't normally hear about on the media. But he brought that perspective to our membership, and that was considerably valuable.
Oh, I bet.
It's still available out there to listen to and watch, isn't it, Russell?
Yes,
wow.
it is.
On the
It's
site?
recorded.
I need to. Yeah. And two, in fact, on the agenda for the conference in November, we have a gentleman coming from New Jersey who's been doing some work. We just met by chance back a couple of months ago, and he's going to come make a presentation on international consulting and the importance of U.S. and American engagement around the world and being involved over there in different parts of in particularly this one, he's working in Africa, but he's going to talk to us about the geopolitical significance and importance of the U.S. being engaged internationally. We're not an island unto ourselves over here. So that'll be an interesting. I'm looking forward to his presentation.
Yeah. Wow. Very interesting.
We've had a few new members just join this year from international. We haven't really communicated much other than getting them into society, but I'm looking forward to them getting involved and giving us some insight from their perspectives. Still on in the working phase of getting them fully and onboarded into the society. Well, the international perspective has been very key in the past and will be in the future.
That's fantastic. And does ASAC promote the profession of agriculture consulting, and how does it promote its members?
Well, I'll speak to that. You know, we just put the word out, word of mouth. Our best advertising is word of mouth. We need to shine our light. We need to make sure we're not have our light under a bushel basket. We need to tell the world about it. In our local areas, we reach out to everybody that's involved, whether it's producers, lenders, extension organizations. I go to a lot of extension programs in the counties around, talk to people. Our extension, AgriLife extension group in Texas is very, very knowledgeable people, do some very great programs. But they're limited. They're a public organization. They have a limit. But to get out and to promote individuals and companies who are offering consulting opportunities, we reached out to the colleges and universities. I was amazed at how many colleges and universities just in Texas have ag programs, not just the land grants, not just A&M, not just Texas Tech. It's a number, and even some community colleges. We need to reach out into the young groups, the FFA programs. We need to let people know that there's, you get your education, you go to work for a while in the world, but there's opportunities in private consulting. May be difficult to break in as a young person, but we want to, we want to enhance the experience for young people to see that there's a future out here in the consulting industry, in the consulting world, in the profession. Accountants, we reach out to accountants, attorneys, anyone who's working in estate planning, management, succession, just the whole breadth and depth, as we used the term early on, of agriculture. There's so many facets of it out here that we just need to promote it. We work with our trade groups, the commodity organizations, anywhere we can go and somebody will stand and listen to me for 5 minutes, I'll talk to them. And what are we trying to do here? And I'm working with a couple of colleges and universities down here in the South to maybe try to put on some kind of conference like we did, you see in some other parts of the country. A lot of groups and universities are reaching out in that regard, but there's no such thing as too much, I don't believe. And we just put it out there and talk it up.
Yeah,
That's what
for
I have
sure.
to say.
Chrissy, if I could just add to what Pete mentioned, and something that actually just occurred to me, Pete, we have a committee called the Strategic Alliance Committee, and
That's right.
a portion of its mission is to reach out to other entities, maybe not
Very good
necessarily in
point.
the same uh, space that we are. For example, organization of the agricultural bankers, if you will, and let them know what ag consultants do and how ag consultants can be of benefit to them and their clientele.
Right.
So, and that's just one example, but we're looking at other ways to reach out across different entities, different organizations. And the two-pronged approach to that would be to promote ag consulting and also promote our members and find ways we can work with these organizations.
That's a
Yeah.
good point. Strategic alliance is reaching out across so many different areas. It's so much out there that we can't cover it all, but we're doing our best to reach out.
Yeah, that's really good. And with the increasing complexity of commercial farms, how do ASAC members fill the knowledge and expertise gaps for those clients? I'm sure that's a big problem as we move into this super technological age, right?
Right.
There's so
Well,
much out
go ahead, Pete.
Well, I was just going to say, I'll lead into what you're going to. There's so much out there. Nobody can know everything.
Yeah, that's it.
I always eschew the term expert. Just something about the word expert throws me off. When somebody says they're an expert in this or somebody's an expert in that, it's just it's just semantics. I know, but we have expertise, we have experience, we have our own areas of competency. But, no one's an expert. I had an old professor who said X is an unknown quantity and the spurts of drip under pressure, but I'll leave it at that. A lot of people out there, great programs on the webinars and other forms of broadcast information, but no one knows everything. And how do we fill the gaps? We talked about it earlier. We have to know our limitations, know our strengths, our weaknesses when we need to bring in some additional help. And Russell, I'll hand it to you there.
Okay. Well, as we alluded to, the increase in complexity in production agriculture is, and this is an understatement, is immense. And I can use a personal example. When I first started, I drove my first tractor when I was a kid. It was a Ford 600. And you may not even know what the heck that is, Chrissy, but it didn't even have power assist steering, certainly no cab. Yeah. And anyway, from there to where we, exactly, from there to where we, cabs and these tractors and equipment now that basically are command and control centers, and even autonomous, which we will see at the FIRA in the end of this month. But so that increase in complexity has brought in a burden, if you will, on farm managers that they can't do everything. Right. And I don't know that Dr. Danny Kleinfelder coined this phrase, but we were at a meeting one time, and I stated this. He turned around and looked at me and gave me a thumbs up. But I think I first heard it from him. And the term or the phrase that I used was, do what you do best, focus on what you do best, and outsource the rest. And there's a good foundational, fundamental economic logic to that. And that is, you spread yourself too thin. And so what we as ag consultants can do is allow the farm producer or agribusiness person to focus on what they do best. And then the gaps, acting as a trusted advisor, compilation, not manipulation, but management of the data, presentation of the data to management actionable insight or intelligence, what I call MAI. That's what we can do, and then assist them in analyzing and determine what that information really means so they can go make their decision. As a real quick example, a comparison, years ago, and this was the early days of computers, so it's a few decades ago. I had two clients. One spent all of his, he was a former Air Force Reserve, very technology oriented individual, spent a lot of his time in front of a computer and knew early spreadsheets in and out. And I had another client that hardly knew how to turn on a computer, but his wife, who was the accounting and what have you, bookkeeping informational person there, and myself, we would get the information together, provide it to the second client, and he would go and make his management decision. Where the first guy, he spent so much time working with numbers that he didn't really have time to make good decisions. And so those were my two analytical comparisons as were how we can do our best job, how we can be most beneficial.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The main thing be the main thing.
Yeah. And Pete, as president, what initiatives or goals do you have for the organization in the near future and even the long-term future?
Membership growth. We need members. We want more members. We need quantity and quality, obviously. We need membership growth. We'll have, like any organization, we've had some who will transition out at retirements, whatever, over the next few years. We need to keep bringing the young people in. We need membership growth. We've got to enhance the education component of this organization, the certification process, which is our important foundation along with the ethics. We have to add value to the organization. We want people to come in and bring value. You get out what you put in.
Yeah.
Something. And I've been beating the drum all year about membership, and everybody's busy. You heard it. You probably said it. I've said it. I don't have time. I don't have time. We make time. We all have the same amount of time. If we're going to join an organization, you can spread yourself too thin, I understand, and you've got priorities. Family comes first, always. But we need membership growth. We need membership involvement. We want people to join in. If you just joined this year and you've got some experience or expertise and have prior work in some organization, roll your sleeves up and jump in. Don't wait to be asked or quote told. Nobody said I'm new. I don't know it. Learn, sink or swim. We want you involved. We want you on our committees. We have a variety of committees doing a variety of. Obviously, you got membership, administration. You got strategic alliance committee. We've got continuing education, which Russell heads up. We've got a number of committees. Join in on the committee work and don't be bashful. If you want to run for the directors, we have 4 regional directors. The country is divided into 4 regions, plus our international members. That's a separate group. But jump in, run for the board of directors, get on the officer track, get involved. We want to enhance the brand. We want it to be the go-to organization for education and ethics and certification as a consultants organization. I'm be a proud member of ASAC. Ride for the brand. You hear that in the West. Ride for the brand. So encourage involvement, membership growth and involvement. Roll your sleeves up, get busy.
That's awesome.
That's the mission.
Very good mission. And so when and where is the convention? I am excited. I'll get to meet you guys in person there.
Yes,
and I can't wait. So tell me about the convention.
Fresno, California, heart of the California ag industry, the 100-mile circle around Fresno. 50+% of the fruits and vegetables grown and consumed in America come from that 100-mile radius. I'm excited about being there. I'm looking forward to meeting some people who I've been communicating with for the last few months and to see some of that country. I've never been out there in those valleys, but I've read about it and seen thousands of pictures. But we'll be at the Wyndham Garden, Fresno, Yosemite Airport, just on the south side of the Fresno Airport, November the 5th through the 7th. That's a Sunday afternoon. It begins we'll have a little board meeting and a reception that evening. The program kicks off on Monday morning. We have a stellar group of people The agenda is on the website, www.agconsultants.org. I won't try to repeat all that here, but go on the website and see that we've got a great lineup of speakers and topics. We'll have a tour, our business meeting on Tuesday at noon, following some of the presentations then, but then we'll have some tours that afternoon. We'll go to California State University, Fresno, more commonly known as Fresno State. They have a excellent, high quality ag program there. The California Water Institute, some other water technology programs. They're at the forefront of water management out in California. So we're going to learn a lot about that. It's going to be a great program. I encourage everyone to show up. Sign up and come. Dick Whitman will do his program, his train the consultant, family business consultant training session on Saturday and Sunday. In conjunction with it, the hotel block is extended to their group too. Hopefully a lot of those will stay over for our conference. Dick is going to also be presenting at our conference on Monday on some of his long-term 40 plus years of consulting experience. So come one, come all. Non-members, if you're not a member of the society and you know a member of the society, call him and lean on him. He or she may be able to get you a member rate for the conference. So
awesome. Good intel.
Russell, what's the registration? I forget off the top of my head.
Let's see, it's
$500 and something dollars.
Yeah, I think it's $595 for members and $100 more for non-members. But Pete mentioned that if a non-member contacts a member, they can provide for them actually a discount that will get them the member rate.
Perfect.
The idea is to contact a member so they'll have some discussion about what the organization is about. One thing we alluded to, but I don't think either one of us explicitly stated, Pete, is that this year is our 60th anniversary.
That's right.
And it's also, and Fresno is where this organization began. That's where it was founded in
that's
Fresno.
exciting.
So 60 years, we're back home, so to speak.
Yeah. And another point on Dick Whitman's program, it's a separate registration from ours, but the hotel block is extended to that group as well on the hotel rate. But he has a separate registration package for his program versus ours. So
perfect.
Come one, come all. We look forward to seeing everybody out there.
I can't wait. It's going to be great. Yeah. And I have one last question for each of you. Why, you've had great careers, you're business owners, you've been consulting, and you're still so engaged in the industry. What are you most passionate about? What keeps you here?
Well, agriculture, as I'm kind of gathered from my background, is in my blood. Mm-hmm. And so it always has been. I've always enjoyed working with people in ag, producers, farmers, and worked with a few ranchers and agribusiness. I found them to be, I say they're unique, but the old term is salt of the earth. And so I found that farmers to be more grounded, my farm clients to be more grounded than non-ag. So I always had a passion for and appreciation for folks that are working and are involved in production agriculture. The other thing is I've always enjoyed being a problem solver, even as a kid, tearing down little pieces of equipment, putting it back together. Something that I found, certainly can be challenging. It certainly was challenging September of 1985 forward with the ag financial crisis. But I have found it to be rewarding to be involved in troubleshooting, having an issue, maybe not necessarily trouble, but certainly an issue or matter, and finding a way to either mitigate, ameliorate, or work through or around an issue.
Right.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what Russell says. It's I grew up with it, and everywhere I've been with Farm Credit and other groups, good people to work with, no matter where you go, whether you're from Texas to Mississippi to California to Florida to Pennsylvania, and all of them. The people are all the same, good people. some of us talk funny, they say, when we go somewhere else, but good people to work with, good industry, great industry. I alluded early on, I'm passionate. After my dad died and I grew up with my cousins, I always remember my dad's cousin telling me they went out of farming in the 70s. We didn't even make it to the 80s crisis. We went out in the 70s. And I'll always remember Robert telling me, said, keep good records, keep good records. We didn't keep good records. We didn't have a clue what we were doing as far as if we were making money or not. Over the course of my career, I've keyed in on that, and we've got to continue to work, and we learn as much from the producers and others that we work with as we hope to impart to them. But it's a great opportunity to continue to work with people. We have the same issues and problems we had 40 years ago when I started, and it was long before that. Even the issues are always there, and we're just so passionate about helping improve the lives of farmers and ranchers and landowners and just everybody in general. We have to keep working at it, and there'll always be challenges. There are no problems out here. There are only opportunities, and we have to continue to work on that. It's a great industry. a lot of my contemporaries are retired and doing other things, and I'm proud for them, but I intend to keep working till I'm 100 years old. I have a role model here, an old doctor. He's from the Philippines. He called me in April and says, change my email from work to personal. I'm going to retire. Yeah, he turned 100 years old on May the 4th. So,
oh, wow.
He'll outwork all of us. His mind's as sharp as a tack. You look at him, you think, hell, he's about 75 years old. No, but that's what I'm passionate about. Keep working. We have so much to do. I'm excited to be a part of all of this. I'm going to keep at it.
Wow, that's a great answer. I love it. And I couldn't agree with you more. Well, thanks so much, guys, for joining me. I'm really excited to get to the conference. It's really just not too long away now, isn't it?
That's right. Time's a wasting. Get your ticket. Come to Fresno. Come to Fresno.
Thank you to all who are watching or listening as well. If you want to learn more, all the links are provided in the show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to North American Ag Spotlight on YouTube, Rumble, or Telegram channels. And the podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Listen Notes, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you like the episode, I would love it if you shared it. And have a great day. Did you know that at NorthAmericanAg.com, we are committed to providing valuable resources for farms and agribusiness? Find your next podcast in the Best of Ag podcast library, delve into our on-demand webinar series, check out the latest in ag news, or treat yourself to a new hoodie or tee from our swag shop. Head over to our subscribe page to join our community and be the first to know about what's happening in the industry. North American Ag provides daily ag news and weekly podcasts covering ag tech, ag policy, new products, family, and faith. North American Ag gives farm families and ag professionals insight into what's happening in agriculture throughout North America. Ditch the mainstream media. Join North American Ag.